Hello everyone, this is the first lesson recording for IM2, March 1st, 2021. Starting with some announcements. Next class, you're going to have quiz number 3. It's going to be on solving quadratic equations. It will test you on meaning of solutions, zero product, square root, quadratic formula, and identify which method to use, and applying solving to situations. So you should be very familiar with the class activities, the Desmos activity, IM2 Unit 8, Day 1, and the following glow stick, and today's Desmos activity. Also, homework number 10, 11, and 12. So what are we doing for the day? We are going to go dig deeper into your understanding of solving quadratic equations, and which method is best to use when, and do we always have two solutions, and more applications of solving. So to start off with, this is where you're taking notes. Okay, solving by zero, comparing different methods. We have 3 different methods. Solving by zero product property, that's the factoring method. Solve by square rooting, and solve by quadratic formula. So what property do I rely on to use the method, and how should my quadratic equation look like before I can use the property? Well, what is the property that we use for quadratic formula? Well, we use the formula basically, and which looks like x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, you need the formula. And then what do you need to have in order to be able to use this? It must be in standard form. The quadratic equation must be in standard form. So if it is not, you need to convert it to standard form, and where on one side and the other side is going to be equal to 0. So it's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. What about solving by factoring and zero product property? You use it because you know that if 2 factors multiply to 0, then you know that at least one of them must be equal to 0. So it is going to be in the form of something multiplied by something is going to be equal to 0. And what about square rooting? You use the property that square rooting undo squaring. So you undo squaring by taking a square root of both sides. Remember, when you do that, you need to remember the plus and minus sign on the side with the constant. And it is always going to be looking at this form. Something squared is equal to a constant. Okay, so in this case, the left hand side is something squared. It can be just x squared, or it can be x minus h all squared, but that is equal to constant. So it's either in vertex form or just x squared term. So you are now going to be working on card number 1 to 8 of the Desmos activity. So card number 1, given this equation, which is the best method to use? Well, can we use zero product property? Can we factor this? Can we use using square roots? Can we square root this? Is it in the x squared is equal to some constant term? No, because we have the 5x here. Okay, so we can't have this 5x term, so therefore we cannot use the using square root. That's not possible. So we have choice between zero product property, that is the factoring, or quadratic formula. Let's see what would happen if I use quadratic formula. Quadratic formula says x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And this tells me that a is the number in front of the x squared, and so a is going to be equal to 1. B is the number in front of the x term, which is 5, and c is 4. So that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus square root of b squared is 5 squared minus 4 times a is 1 times 4 all over 2a, so 2 times 1. Then I need to simplify, so that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus square root of 5 squared is 25 minus 4 times 4 is 16 all over 2. That simplifies to negative 5 plus or minus 25 minus 16 is 9 all over 2, which is going to be minus 5 plus or minus square root of 9 is 3 all over 2. So then I have my two different solutions. X is equal to negative 5 plus 3 all over 2, which is negative 5 plus 3 is going to be negative 2 over 2, that's going to be negative 1. The other solution is negative 5 minus 3 all over 2, and that is going to be negative 8 over 2, which is negative 4. So I have two solutions, negative 1 and negative 4. Okay, so that's one method. Now think about zero product property. Okay, that means we need to factor. Is this equation easily factorable? Well, I know that the leading coefficient is 1. That means it is easy. Okay, so I know that x and x goes here. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 4 that add to 5. 1 times 4 is that. So 1 and 4. It's plus and plus. So that means x plus 1 is equal to 0, or x plus 4 is equal to 0. So bringing 1 to the other side, you get x is equal to negative 1 here, and bringing 4 to the other side, by taking the negative, x is equal to negative 4. Okay, so which one was much easier? Okay, we did get the same answer, x is equal to negative 1 or x is equal to negative 4. Which was much easier? The factoring was far easier than quadratic formula. Yes, quadratic formula works for every single problem, but whenever possible, if factoring is possible, then zero product property and factoring is the method of choice. And with quadratic formula, you are going to find that it is very, very easy to make plus or minus mistakes, and you're not necessarily going to be able to see that you've made a mistake, because this is just purely plugging in the values. While as with factoring, when you just factor and when you just use FOIL to multiply out, you can quickly check if your factoring is correct, and then from here you can find your solutions really easily. So whenever possible, zero product property with factoring is the method of choice over quadratic formula. Okay, what about this? X squared plus 6x plus negative is equal to negative 5. Well, because we have the 6x, we have something, the variable being squared as well as being multiplied. So because of the 6x, we cannot use using the square root. So again, the choice is between zero product property and quadratic formula. To be able to use, remember, zero product property using the factoring is going to be far easier. But for that, it needs to be factorable. To check that, I mean, either way, you need to convert this to standard form. So I am going to convert to the standard form by bringing the negative 5 over to the other side by taking a negative of it. So negative of negative 5 is positive 5. So that's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 5. That's negative of negative 5 is going to be equal to 0. Okay, so we essentially added 5 to both sides. Now, can I factor this? That's my easy factoring one, so I can quickly check. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 5. Positive 5, so it's going to be positive and positive, or negative and negative, that add to 6. So that's going to be plus 5 and plus 1. So that was really easy, okay? And then from here, I know that I can set each of the equation to be equal to 0. So it's going to be x is equal to negative 5, and x plus 1 is equal to 0, so x is equal to negative 1. So zero product property will be the method of choice for this one also. Number 3, what method would you use for solving this problem? X squared minus 11 is equal to 39. In this case, we do not have the x term. We don't have something multiplied by x term here. We only have the x squared term, and we just have two numbers, two constants. That means what I can do is I can bring this number negative 11 to the other side by adding 11 to both sides, and that would leave me with x squared is going to be equal to 50. Okay, by 11 plus 39 is going to be 50, and then that means I can take square root of both sides. Remember, I do need to put my plus and minus sign when I do that. Square and square rooting, they cancel undo each other, and you're left with x is equal to square plus or minus square root of 50, which is going to be simplified to square root of 25 multiplied by square root of 2. So that is going to be plus or minus 5 root 2. So that was really easy. So the method of choice in this case is using square roots. Okay, what about this? We have 7x squared minus 11x plus 23 is equal to 0. Okay, so well, we cannot use the square rooting because of this 11x, negative 11x. So that is ruled out. So again, now we have the choice between zero product property and quadratic formula. So in this case, we're dealing with big number. Okay, so 7x squared. So if it was just x squared, I would definitely say zero product property. So because we have leading coefficient that is greater than 1, it really depends on how fluent you are. Factoring is going to be still far easier, especially if you know how to factor using just guess and check method. Okay, and I've shown you this, and I'm going to show you one more time. So if the only way I can get 7x squared is if I have 7x being multiplied by x. That because 7 is a prime number, so the only way I can get is 7 times 1 is going to be that. What about 23? Okay, so 23, is there a number that multiplies to 23 that will add to 11, negative 11? So that means the only factors are 23 and 1. If I put 23 here and 1 here, it's certainly not going to add to negative 11. No, if I do the other, so if I do 23 and 7, if I subtract 20, I know that one's going they both have to be positive or they both have to be negative, so I need to add this, and that's certainly not going to be negative 11. So I know that this is not factorable. That means the only choice I have is quadratic formula. So, and I know that with quadratic formula it always works. I just need to correctly identify A is 7, B is equal to negative 11, and C is equal to 23. But generally, unless we're dealing with really big numbers, I would try to do the factoring first. What about this problem? Okay, so we have something squared is equal to 16. I can always get rid of this 2 by dividing both sides by 2. And then that leaves me with 2x minus 1 all squared is equal to 8. So then from here I can take square root of both sides. Taking into account I will have plus and minus version of the answer. And so the easiest way to solve this one is by using square roots. What about this? It's pretty obvious because on the left hand side is factored and is equal to 0. That means we can use zero product property. So yes, I am going to use the zero product property. Okay, I will let you do the number 7 card and number 8 card on